Welcome to Massive Passive Cashflow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cashflow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad you're back listening to the show. We got a great guest today, Joe Herbert. Joe and I met the summer of 2022 through another person. And I can tell he and I had a lot in common, investing in real estate, building a brokerage, serving the community and involved with his people too, which is a strong trait of good leaders. I mean, leaders who come from contribution and serve with a server's heart always succeed. So any case, so Joe, first off, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking your time. I know you're really busy. And I know we're also very grateful to have you on board.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And anytime anybody ever reaches out to me and wants me to share knowledge, I always take that opportunity. I'm never too busy for that.
Oh, perfect. I agree 100%. I have that commitment too. Funny thing is, I have the same cell phone number that I got in 1991 when cell phones were still relatively new. And I'll get calls from people that 20 some odd years ago out of the
Wow,
blue. And
that's
when it
awesome.
happens, it feels amazing because
Yeah,
whatever you did impacted them enough to remember you to call you 20 years later. So, well, let's do this. Let's start at the beginning. Um, I never did ask you about your background prior to real estate, but
sure.
possibly like me, I was in another industry altogether before I got into real estate at all. Can you take us back to your point, what I call the shift in your life? What brought you into real estate? And what was that like? And maybe what was your first experience?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, my degree is actually in electrical engineering, and I spent about 25 years in the corporate world. And it's a funny story. One of my friends that I grew up with, we were playing tennis one day, and this is actually when we were in college. And I went down to pick him up at this property. It was actually a 6-unit building that his residential building his father bought. And they were in there totally redoing it, sand and drywall and all this stuff. And I'll never forget I said to my friend, what are you guys doing down here? He goes, well, my dad bought this building. And I said, well, what are you going to do with it? And he goes, well, people rent these apartments, they give us money, and then we buy the building with that money. And I'll never forget that. It just struck a chord with me that I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, you're going to get other people to buy this building for you? I'm like, that's really cool. And I didn't become a real estate investor until sometime after that. But I think it's important to note, I don't want to get way into my background, but when I grew up in a very challenging, not just a huge lack of money in my family, but I love my father. God bless him, God rest his soul, but came from a difficult background. He was a very
Yeah.
negative person, and I inherited that, that negative scarcity. Some people even call it a poverty mindset, but I can tell you, until I was in my mid 40s, I literally made every mistake in the book. Every education, employment, relationship, financial mistake. And the only thing I would say is, it was non-negotiable for me to turn out like that. I didn't know how. And, when I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube, right? We didn't have Audible.
Yeah.
There were no podcasts. So, you couldn't access the content and the mentors and the success stories that you can access now.
Mhm.
But I would say I was in my mid 40s, and believe it or not, I wound up, I had a nightclub. I had a bar and a restaurant. I was still working as an engineer, had about 4 or 5 rental properties. Long story short, it kind of all came tumbling down, mostly because, again, just my mindset was not a good mindset. And I was actually
Mhm.
broke. I spent about 5 days in the hospital, really sick from all the stress. I'm sure, this story sounds familiar, but it's all true. So when I was kind of
Yeah.
hit rock bottom, I really started looking back and saying, how did this happen? And then I discovered self-improvement. And, today
Mhm.
we all know Tony Robbins, but there was a guy, Earl Nightingale, who was a personal improvement guru back in the 50s. And my friend
Mhm.
gave me his CD because my friend said, man, you're in a bad place. You're super negative. you're broke, you're not feeling well. And it was called The Strangest Secret. And I listened to that. Ironically, I was driving down to Pittsburgh to visit my sisters, and it just
Mm-hmm.
blew my mind. I went home and I looked in the mirror and I finally found the person that was responsible for everything that went wrong. Because every day if something didn't work, I was like, oh, it's my employer's fault, it's my friend's fault, it's somebody else's fault. Um, so I think it's important to give that background. And from that point on, I really started, like I said, you know what, I have to figure out how are people financially being successful? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, I didn't grow up with it. I had it for a while, I lost it. And then at that time, of course, YouTube was available. And in the last 10 years, I'm most of my content, whether it's Audible books, podcasts, YouTubes, I'm just constantly analyzing high net worth people that are successful. How are they doing it? What's their mindset? What's their habits like? How do they live their life? What decisions do they make? Who do they surround themselves with? Even what industries are they in? And
Mm-hmm.
it's ironic because before we started the podcast, on this whiteboard behind me, I've become a little obsessed lately with studying billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why is, I asked myself, how is somebody getting $1 billion?
Mm-hmm.
Forbes just came out the other day with their list again of the richest billionaires, and there's 26 new billionaires in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in fact, I just did a podcast. My podcast is called The Job Free Economy. And I always hated having a job. That's why I called it the job free economy, because it was my goal to like become financially free, have a high level of financial and personal freedom, but not need a job. It was a suffer fest for me to be in the corporate world. I'll just be, real honest with you.
Yeah.
And so this is all important because this is what led me to become a realtor. I was just looking to get out of the corporate world, and a broker approached me and said, hey, from those businesses you've owned and you had a few properties, you would be a really good realtor. And I was always an outgoing person, and it just struck a chord with me. I'll never forget it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to check out real estate sales. And so I got my license. I did it part-time for a year to see if I liked it, and I did. And then I just jumped. I got out of the corporate world and I went into it full time. That was 20 years
Okay.
ago. And just for me, I hit the ground running. I loved it. And
Mm.
at the time, I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. I could put my heart and soul into it. And I made twice what I was making as an engineer. It worked out really good.
Yeah.
As you know, Gary, real estate sales isn't for everybody, but
Yeah.
I know that whenever people join my company and they come in full time and they do what I tell them to do, they do well.
Yeah.
So that's how I wound up in real estate sales. I hope that answers
And,
that question.
and that was about 2004, then the early 2000s when you,
Yeah, I
and
got
I'm
my
guessing.
license, I think, in 2000, right at the end of or beginning of '05. Yeah.
Okay, so you were, yeah, we that was I got mine in January 2002, and I and this sounds crazy. I did 110 transactions my first year, and I was still working at PNC Bank. I was computer engineering. This is why you and I get along so
Oh,
well.
wow,
We
that's great. Yeah.
have the same technical background, but I didn't think it was anything spectacular. I had no clue. I just assumed this was normal. I mean, it was fast and furious, and now,
Yeah.
granted, I had a lot of investors I was working with. I had a lot of repeat business. I didn't have 110 clients. In fact, I probably had a couple dozen at best, but it was so fast then, Joe. I remember what that was like. So then a couple years later, the big recession hits, and I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 7 years with this podcast, and a lot of people really struggled during the recession years because you had properties and you had a business, and I mean it was just like, you know, pretty. It was a crisis, is what it was. We were darn near close to having a full blown depression. Um, Without going into all those details, how did you like barely get through that, or did you find yourself thriving through that, or kind of tell us about that phase of the business
Sure.
too? I want people to hear this, guys. Everybody, pay attention here, because we will likely have another recession. In fact, not likely, we are going to have one. It's a mathematical certainty. We just can't tell you when, but it's a natural part of the business cycle. And the sooner you get used to that and accept it, then you can look for solutions to how to improvise, adapt, overcome, and adjust, and not panic. It's not time to panic. It's time to prepare. So I want you to listen to what Joe's getting ready to tell you. I don't know what he's going to tell you, but I know that he's here now, so I know he got through it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't remember who said it, a famous like
Mm.
guy who made a lot of money in the stock market. It might have been, I said Peter Lynch. I think he said
Yes,
you should be
Peter Lynch.
buying
Yeah.
when there's blood in the water, even if it's yours.
Oh yeah.
And I've always taken
Yeah.
that mindset as a realtor. No matter what the market's been like, when things get tough, a lot of people get out of it or they go,
Mhm.
what else am I going to do? And I just kind of double down on what works and then also try to add something else I haven't done. Um, you know, right now in Erie and we know across the country, there's been a shortage of inventory. So
Mhm.
I've just really doubled down on the things that have gotten me listings, which is putting videos out on my YouTube channel. I have over 100 videos now on YouTube. And
Mhm.
if you want to check those out, by the way, you can go find if you go on YouTube and search on Erie real estate, most of my videos come up because nobody's competing with me on that.
Yeah.
And as a side note, some of the content I watch, like Cody Sanchez and Patrick Bet David of Valuetainment, they talk about figuring out what's your superpower. And I realized one
Mhm.
of my superpowers is I love being in front of a camera. I can't get any of my realtors to do video. They're too afraid to be in front of the camera. So if you love being in front of the camera, you have a major advantage over other realtors. And
Yeah.
I got the idea, ironically, from an EXP agent that I was
Mhm.
studying a couple of years ago. He was in San Antonio. He moved there, didn't know anybody. His name was Suman Kim.
Mm.
Um, and he moved down to San Antonio and started doing listing videos, and his business just took off. And he actually walks around with a gimbal filming the house and walking through it. So you really don't see him. And I said, no, I'm going to do one better. I'm going to have somebody follow me with the camera and I'm going to be
Mhm.
in the video the whole time. And
Yeah.
right now, about 66% of my business is listings. And of course, we know
Mhm.
if we have a listing, you're getting a paycheck. If you
Right.
have a buyer, you're going to be working a lot of hours. So I've just
Mhm.
doubled down on YouTube, and I even do other things. I have an inventory report I do once a month. I'm going around
Mhm.
filming coffee shops now and great places to hike. And so I've just doubled down on YouTube in these tough times, and it's really paid off. But even back
Awesome.
when like the foreclosure crisis was going on, like in, '07 and '08, I just kept just doing more of what I was doing. Started writing more letters, started calling more people and asking for referrals. And my business dipped a little then, but I got
Mhm.
through it because, if times are tough, you got to
Yeah.
do more. No doubt about it.
Yeah. What's interesting is statistically, if you look at I'm just going to speak about the United States. We have listeners all over the world now, and a lot in Canada. I used to live in Canada for a while, but just in the United States, statistically, during the heart of the recession years, volume on average was only down 25%. Now I say only, that's actually very dramatic. 25% is a big drop, but half the agents left the business. So what that meant is the other half of the agents that stayed, the 50% that stayed, statistically then increased their business by 50% because remember, volume only dropped
Yeah.
25%. That doesn't mean every agent experienced that. Some agents, their business grew like mine. We grew sixfold during the first 3 years of the recession. But remember, we had a lot of investors, but a lot of agents did well when others didn't. And the thing is if you think about what we're doing, in a recession, in a depression, whenever there's a market shift, properties are still changing hands. They're still going from somebody's left hand to somebody else's
Yeah.
right hand. And our job is to determine who they are and reach out to them and get those listings. And sometimes you take on the buyers, obviously. Um, but really, I'd like you, I didn't really have a major change in my model. I just kept doing what I was doing. And we just did a lot of it. I mean, I launched this is going to sound crazy, Joe. I launched my brokerage in January of 2008, January 5th to
Yeah.
be exact, my birthday. And
Wow.
everybody thought I was completely nuts. You're launching a real estate brokerage now in the worst recession in 80 years that's led by real estate.
Yeah.
And I just would look at them and scratch and say, well, that's what I'm doing. And sure enough, man, all the big box companies were coming trying to buy me, and they kept saying, we just want to you show our guys what you're doing, and I would say respectfully, you can't just flip a switch. This is who I am. This is what I was been doing myself personally, and you can't just do it overnight. You've got to be that person to play that role and then get the results. So let's talk about um, so you have your own brokerage, and the brokerage is Joe Herbert Real Estate, Joe Herbert Realty. Is that the actual?
Joe Herbert Realty. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Joe
Okay,
Herbert Realty.
and it's still there. You're up and
Yeah.
running, and
Mhm.
you're serving the community. I mean, I think you're well positioned because now you've got 20 years experience. Oh, sorry. When did you launch the brokerage? And tell us about that journey, if you don't mind. Share that journey with us a little bit. You
That's
know?
an interesting journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, after about, I launched the brokerage 8 years ago. But
Hmm.
after being a realtor for 12 years, I was showing a bunch of houses on a Sunday night. I came home at 9 o'clock. My back
Hmm.
were sore. My feet and back were sore. And I was having good success, and also I was always documenting what I did, and I said, I think I could be good at helping people get in this business and succeed. And so that's when I decided to get my broker license. And I actually wanted to franchise. I wanted to bring the Keller Williams franchise to Erie. And unfortunately, there was some unethical behavior by some people, and they led me to believe that they were going to help me do that here in Erie. And but they
Yeah.
really did is they used me to educate them about Erie, and then they yanked the opportunity out from underneath me. So
Oh yeah.
I just
Yeah.
decided, you know what, I'm going to be an independent. So I opened up Joe Herbert Realty,
Yeah.
and bought a building and just kind of been going forward from there. And it's still Joe Herbert Realty today, and got about 15 agents, and um, it's
Awesome.
everything's been good.
Yeah. And do you recall what's the population of the Erie, the metro area? So you've got Erie, the town,
Yeah,
but then of course it spreads out for a while
yeah.
and there's other communities up there too,
I will say, like, Erie's a very unique market. Even back when the foreclosures were going on, Pennsylvania wasn't even in the top 25 states for a number of
Yep.
foreclosures. So if you were a realtor in California or Florida or a broker in those states during that time, it certainly was a lot tougher. And when we talk about investment property, Erie is a unique market for that.
Mhm.
But so yeah, you have to kind of like take that with a grain of salt that
Yeah.
it's interesting in Erie before 4 years ago, uh, the average price of a home here was $138,000 if you averaged out the county. And now
Yeah.
after COVID, it's just up to about 200,000. Isn't that crazy? Now we have,
Yeah.
$1 million homes here, but we have so many houses that are, 50 to
Right.
180 grand in the city. But all to answer your question, all of Erie County
Yeah.
has about 270,000 people. That's it, the whole county.
Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto. Okay. How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live. Be ready to take notes and ask questions because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to GaryRealEstateWithGaryWilson.com. Click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care. Yeah. Well, you know what? I didn't realize it was that big, Joe. I was going to say somewhere between 150 and two. And it was interesting if you think about the price, what we call the delta before and after, you were at 130 average. Now you're 200. That's actually just greater, a little bit greater than a 50% increase in
Yeah.
price. That's on par with a lot of other areas in the country. It's just your average price is still lower than the national median. But you know what? It's a good thing when especially
Yeah.
it's just more affordable for people. I mean, I look at places like Colorado and Texas and California and Florida. It's just I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
I was in Florida back in 20, was it 2020 or 2021? And some of my oldest, dearest friends, they were students of mine who ended up getting married. They bought a triplex down there, sorry, a duplex down there for 700,000, right on the water, totally, completely remodeled. And as of last year, a year ago, so it had been probably 3 years, it was up to 1.3 million, the appraised value. It almost literally doubled. I was going to buy a here personally. I was going to buy a out on the beachfront. They were on the Lemon Bay, but on the beachfront called Minnesota Key. I was looking at 2 bedroom condos for 250,000. Very nice, right on the water view. Didn't pull the trigger because just
I
typical.
know.
I've got so much going on. I'll have to get to it later. Well, guess what? They were over 500,000 last summer, close to 600,000. I could kick myself, and I know better. I'm in the business,
Yeah,
But
I was in Florida in December, this past
mhm,
December, and I'm looking at 1,500 square foot houses, 2 beds, 1 bath. If they're on like sitting on one of those canals, yeah, they're 1 million to 1.8 million. It's ridiculous. And I was looking at, I own a couple motels here in Erie, and I was looking at motels down there. And here in Erie, you can buy a motel for 25 to 30,000 a room, and down
yeah,
there, they're 100,000 and up a room.
oh yeah,
And I looked at a couple 10-unit properties. This is in the St. Pete's area.
mhm,
And, these are 1 bedroom apartments, 700 square feet, 200,000 a unit. It's
yeah,
insane. So I said, you know what?
yeah,
I get a lot of cash flow with everything in Erie. I'm just going to keep my cash flow here.
yeah. I agree. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So, and I know the feeling because I'm an investor too. I'm like, boy, do I really disclose everything about the area and show all the goods, or do I kind of keep close to the vest? The reality is I've learned over the years, the more I share, the the
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the more I grow, and people, I could tell a room of 100 people exactly what to do, where to go, what to buy, how much to spend, everything. Maybe one of them will actually do it.
I was
Is
just
that is
going to
that
say too.
2 people? Yeah. So tell us a little about you've invested yourself personally. You've got some hotels. Did that start off with little single family homes and duplexes, Joe? Or kind of, if you tell us about that journey, if you don't mind sharing,
Yeah. Yeah. My very first property was a little 1-story house, and it was a block from this hospital, and the
Mm,
area was kind of growing. So I bought it for 26,000 and flipped it for 38. And that was a while ago.
mm,
That was 25 years ago.
mhm.
Um, But it's interesting. I had a couple some multifamily properties. I had a couple multi-tenant office buildings. I had an Airbnb house, and so I bought this 5 unit 2 years ago. And next door was this old rundown motel. And I looked over the fence at this motel, and it was full of people that you didn't want living next door to your 5 unit. Let's just say, based on the activity that I saw going on.
Yeah.
So I said to my property manager, "Go, we got to buy that motel." So,
Mhm.
excuse me.
Yeah.
So I reached out to the owner and just serendipity, whatever. He wanted to sell, so I bought it and we cleaned it up, and we do short-term and extended stay there now,
Mhm.
and bought some good software for it. And I said, well, I kind of like this model, so we bought another one, and I'm trying to buy another one now. So I kind of like motels.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I have a 12 unit, I'm sorry, I have 12 tenants here in my office building by the airport.
Okay.
And now I'm buying the commercial property next door. It's a little trailer park with 2 office buildings on it. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of diversified in real estate. I have a little bit of everything. But
Hmm.
it's funny. I never thought I would like these motels, but then, like I said, 2 years ago I bought the first one. A year ago I bought the second one, and that's why when I was in St. Pete's I was looking at motels, but they're just
Yeah.
overpriced. But
Yeah.
Erie is
Yeah.
a cash flow market. I have friends in California that, they say out there you buy for appreciation. But here in Erie, we still have really good cash flow. It's not unheard of to get, a 9 to 12 cap rate. And I do work with out of town investors, and most of my agents, when they come here, I tell them, look, being a realtor is not a business where you're going to have a pension. You should own real estate. So I have a lot of courses I teach on real estate investing. And so I teach them how to invest. And I would say 2/3 of my agents own rental property now, which is really good. And I also think if it helps you as a realtor, if you own rental property, because you're used to managing, you know what it costs to get stuff done. You see the problems, you know the product. And even if you're helping somebody buy a single family house, it really helps you as an agent. You're way more knowledgeable than agents that don't own property. So that's
Yeah,
a recommendation that I have.
I agree 100%. We teach all of our agents how to invest. Most of them don't invest, but we want them to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk
Yeah.
because it's if you look at the entire industry, you strip out commercial, just focus on residential, anything up to including, 4 units. Well, technically it's well 4 or 5, but in any case, uh, it's that sector of our business is growing dramatically. When I first got in,
Yeah.
maybe 30% was investor transactions. Now in California, it's almost 60% of the residents of California rent now. When I first taught out there, Joe,
Amazing.
the rentership was 36%. And that's 9 years ago. So in 9 years, rentership in California went from 36% to now it's like 58%. We just looked it up the other day. So it's just a passion of mine. I think every agent should learn how to invest, whether they invest or not. So at least they can serve that part of the community and give themselves multiple streams of income just with the usage of their license. At the end of the day, maybe they'll see their way to buying some of their own real estate. So I want to talk about your training programs here in a minute, but
Sure.
back to your mixture of properties. What I like about it, Joe, is the laws related to residential rentals, traditional rentals where you rent to a young couple or a family or a college student, year-long leases or traditional long-term leases, one-year leases. Legislation across both US and Canada had been leaning more and more towards renter rights and away from owner rights. I'm not making any political statement or complaining. It's just a fact of life, you know? So if you look at other, asset classes like hotels, like storage, car washers are a big thing right now. It allows you to diversify, which is a good thing, but also puts you in a different body of law, different part of
Yeah,
legislation. And
absolutely.
within residential, short-term rentals like hotels, Airbnb, even the corporate housing, what we now call midterm rentals, which is traveling business people, traveling nurses, that part of the business, it really is hasn't been touched much when it comes to legislation. There has been pushback lately against the short-term rentals, Airbnb specifically, not hotels, but Airbnb at the local level, the municipal level, but at the national level. Think about it, Joe. You and I are both in the business. When was the last time we heard anything out of Washington, D.C. remotely related to increasing home ownership in our country like we saw back in the
Yeah.
70s, 80s, and 90s? We don't hear anything at all.
Yeah.
So the reality is we can go with the flow, obviously grow our business by serving that community, but more importantly, we can be part of the solution, which is, in my opinion, affordable housing. We're estimated to be 4 to 7 million units short in the United States, and
Wow.
the vast majority of it is affordable housing. So you just have to have policy in place to incentivize builders and investors to provide that kind of housing. Otherwise, we're going to just go where the cash flow is. So I just wanted to emphasize that for the listeners. But if you could, I'm really intrigued about the next set of questions here I have for you related to your training. So you
Sure.
saw the need to, and it's a passion for you. Tell us a little bit about that. What you've been working on. What can consumers expect if they decide to participate in that? Um, Go ahead.
All right, great. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm building this platform. It's an online education company. It's called selfmadewealth.co, right? Selfmadewealth.co. And actually, if you go out, if anybody goes out there now, if you click on ebooks, there's a whole bunch of free ebooks that I have. And it's centered around helping people find financial and personal freedom. But it is going to have, besides all the mindset content, and like I have an ebook there called Goal Mastery. It's really good about goal setting. And it's all the techniques I've used to set and accomplish goals. And if you're not sure what you want to do, there's an ebook out there called Clarity Toolkit.
Okay.
And it's a step-by-step process to figure out what you want out of life, why you want it, and then what are the different ways you can get it. It's a really good, it's almost like I call it the clarity toolkit because it is like an exercise. And but I do have a couple courses that I'm working on right now. One is called How to Buy a Rental Property in 90 Days or Less. And I actually have been teaching that live for years. And now I'm going
Hmm.
to put that out there as a digital class. And we're about halfway done with that. And if anybody's interested in that, if you go to selfmadewealth.co, just
Okay.
sign up for the newsletter or download any of the ebooks because it'll put you in the email list. And when that course comes out, we'll let you know. And then
Okay.
I have a great course on how to use other people's money to buy real estate because I've been a
Hmm.
master at private lending, seller financing. I've worked deals so many different ways. So this course is great. It's going to be all the forms and the techniques that I use to buy
Yeah.
money with it, or to buy real estate with as little money out of my pocket. So that'll
Yeah.
be the second course we'll work on. And you can also go out there and find the Job Free Economy podcast. And as I mentioned, uh, the one on the board behind me is going to be the next Job Free Economy podcast episode. But I did put an episode up where I was reviewing the Forbes billionaire list and then a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
research I did on billionaires. But
Hmm.
all there's about 50 podcast episodes out there. So there's a ton of stuff out there now. But the whole thing about selfmadewealth.co is it's for people who want to get out of that W-2 world and develop, like I said, a high level of financial and personal freedom. Like
Hmm.
I went in April of last year, I went to New Zealand fly fishing for 3 weeks. And it was just an amazing, amazing trip. New Zealand's an incredible place.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that I want to do in life. And I don't want to have to worry about asking my boss for, can I get 3 weeks off or figuring out how I'm going to pay for it. Back when my one of my engineering friends, when I lived in New England, he lives on the West Coast. He's the guy I take my fly fishing trips with. When he calls me and says, "Hey, I can get us a guide for 3 weeks in New Zealand," I don't even get off the phone, Gary. I just go book it. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of life I want to live, right? I don't have to
Yeah.
ask anybody for my time off. I know I can pay for the trip. That trip cost me 15 grand. I honestly, God, I'm not bragging, but I want
Yeah.
everybody to have that ability to not worry about how the bills are getting paid. If there's an emergency in your family, it's going to
Hmm.
be taken care of. A couple months ago, I rented a house right on the ocean in Foley Beach in Charleston, South Carolina.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
6 bedrooms and 6 baths, and I had my sister's families come down there. We stayed right on the ocean. It was great. Those are the things that I want to be able to do. And real estate in particular allows me to do it. But really, what really allowed me to do it was that massive mindset shift that occurred when I
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm going to figure out how these other people are doing it. I'm going to change my mindset, my beliefs, how I decide to do things, who I'm surrounding myself with, what am I doing with my time and my money. And that segues into another thing. I self-published a book a few years ago. It's called Get Rich in 5 Hours, but it has nothing to do with money.
Okay.
It was all the mistakes and the lessons that I made, and I grouped them into 6 categories. I call it the 6 life assets. And that's what really changed my life. Doesn't matter whether you want to pursue money in, e-commerce, manufacturing, fashion, real estate. That's up to you, right? Your personality and your passion will lead you down those trails. But can you develop that mindset of a wealth builder? And that's what the book was about. And that book can also be found on the selfmadewealth.co. So
Okay.
anyway, that's I think that's more important than anything. And on the board here, I was
Hmm.
brainstorming. I've listened to so much content about billionaires, and not that you have to want to be a billionaire, but if you
Yeah.
adapt these traits, and this next podcast is going to be what are the 10 traits that I really see over and over and over in all the content I watch about high net worth people. And so that next podcast is going to be about those 10 traits. But you don't
Yeah.
have to want to be a billionaire to adopt these traits. If you adopt these
Right.
traits, I can tell you your life is going to get better. So that's what selfmadewealth.co is about.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot to be said for focusing on developing yourself, personal development.
Yeah.
making yourself the best that you can be, the best human you can be. And then the actions you take will be the actions that type of person takes, the person who's
Yeah.
successful. And everybody I know who's got involved with this part of their life, and I started when I was 32 years old. I happened to I went to one of my rentals. Somebody had moved out and they left some stuff, and there was a book there by Tony Robbins, "Awaken the Giant Within."
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't read a book since I was in high school. I mean, college. I read books in college, but they were all technical. So I got that book, sat on my nightstand for Lord knows how long. Finally, I was bored. I said, I'll just pick it up. I was hooked as soon as I read the first page. And that
Yeah.
changed the trajectory of my life from that point forward. Ever since then, I've been a student of the human life, human experience. It didn't change my spiritual religious views. It actually enhanced them. I mean,
Yeah.
I can speak openly about it, and there's so much connection. There's so much alignment that you can always go back and find all these rules, all these lessons. People always ask me, when people ask me what's the best book, I'm like, you gotta read the Bible. I mean, it's all in there. And I'm
That's
not trying to
amazing.
preach a sermon. It's just a fact. If
Yeah.
you look at Think and Grow Rich, I mean, everything in there goes back to the scriptures.
Yeah.
So I really started digging in and learning. I took uh, you know Bible study for 14 years. I actually, this is crazy. I mean, I'm a minister. I'm not like a ordained minister. I don't have a church. I don't think they give guys like me a church to run. So, but I can do weddings and funerals. I just got to register in any county. But it doesn't. That's not what makes me a good person.
Yeah.
What makes me a good person is I focus so much on others, on developing others, because I've
Yeah.
learned so much myself and been blessed so much. I'm like, I have to share this. And that journey started about 20 years ago when I got my license, and same things, did training programs, the whole 9 yards. And I've now personally taught over 24,000 investors and agents
Wow. That's
in
great.
the business in
Yeah.
person. It started off, so I never got in front of a group of 10,000 people, Joe. It was, groups of 20 to 25 people over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just, I like that format. And now I've got a bunch of friends all over the US and Canada. Wherever I go, it's funny because I always have somebody to call to go meet up with and go play around a golf or go to dinner or what have you. But what you're doing, the journey you're on now, Joe, I just want to commend you for what you've done
Thanks. I
and commend you
appreciate
for
it.
where you're going. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like Zig Ziglar says, if you just simply help enough other people get what they want, you'll get plenty of what you want. So everybody listening here,
Yeah.
if what you want is financial freedom, you got to have multiple streams of income. Number one, Joe's a living example of it. He's doing it, you know, and Joe's helping other people do it too. And I'm just going to kind of put a plug in for you guys. I spoke to Joe about a month ago. I just, for some reason, Joe, I don't know if I saw your name. I think I was looking at that's what I was looking for, an email from someone else, and your name was in there. I said, my gosh, I'm going to call up Joe. And I'm so
You
grateful I
did.
did, because I had no idea that you were
Yeah.
creating training programs, had written a book, and following this path, this journey of service. Because you do have to love people to do this. So everybody listening, just know this. If you ever question why would someone like Joe or Gary spend so much time serving others, it's because it feels good. I mean, I'm telling you,
Let me
I
chime in
most
on
of what
that.
I
Yeah, let me
yeah.
chime in on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, those are a couple of things that happened in that mindset shift. One is I really changed my attitude about sharing with people. I was afraid to share with people, like, they're going to take advantage of me, or they're going to steal my idea, or they might not pay me back. I just did a podcast episode in the Job Free Economy, and it was called "The Universe Will Pay You Back." Because, I hate that saying when people say, oh, no good deed goes unpunished, or nice guys finish last. That is the worst mentality in the world. I don't care if the other person reciprocates. I know the universe is going to reciprocate to me because I did something good for somebody else, and it does.
Right.
That's the essence of the law of attraction. So that's one thing that changed in my mindset. I help people freely now, and I never worry about getting anything back because I know the universe is going to reward me. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
thing that changed is my view on money. I used to, when I was poor, I used to view wealthy people, oh, they're greedy, or they're dishonest, or it's shallow to want a lot of money. It's not any of those things. I think, again, if you go on my website, selfmadewealth.co, I have this manifesting gratitude manual. It's called the Money Playbook. It's really
Mhm.
great. You can download it for free. Um, but my goal is again to make a lot of money so I can help other people's lives be better. I can do more philanthropy. I don't care if I drive a Mercedes or a Lamborghini. That's not why I'm doing it. So it's okay to want to be very wealthy if you plan on doing the right things with it and taking care of your family better. Again, doing more philanthropy. So, and that's why I love selfmadewealth.co, because to come from where I was to where I'm at, I want everybody to have that transformation. So that's why I'm
Yeah,
doing it. Right now, there's
yeah,
nothing on that website that's monetized. Everything there is free. So
yeah,
I'm not doing it for the money.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is when I've seen this in others too, is I've grown, so is my bank account, and it
Yeah,
ends up being
absolutely.
in one regard like a measure. It's not the end game, it's not the goal, but it becomes a measurement of how well you've done
Yeah,
achieving your goals. And if your goals are in alignment with other people, if you're able to help others lift them up and raise them up in their status in life, you've done a good thing, and it's okay to be
absolutely.
rewarded. I always tell people, look, don't be afraid to receive. A lot of people who come across wealth or gain wealth through their efforts have this unique character trait, which is we never accept things from other people. Like, yeah, I'm sure here's a perfect example. I go out to dinner with my family or friends. Early on when I started making money, I would say, "Let me get that. Let me get the bill. Let me get the." Now they all expect me to pay it, even though they want to pay sometimes. It's okay to receive from others. It's actually part of the cycle of abundance. In order for you
Yeah,
to have more to give, you got to be able to receive, and it's not material, but it expands your mental, emotional, spiritual capacity to give more and serve others more.
yeah,
That's really what it comes down to. And it's just an amazing journey. And I want to repeat some of these things for everybody here. So we got the Job Free Economy podcast, and can they find that by going to your website, or is it on Apple or any of the other?
yeah. It's on
The,
Spotify, it's on Stitcher, it's on iHeart, it's on Apple. So yeah, they
okay,
can subscribe to the feed, and then all the audio version and the blog versions of it are on selfmadewealth.co. Yeah,
gotcha.
absolutely.
So selfmadewealth.co, they can get the blogs, they can get the book
Everything.
there too. The book,
Yep.
which is Get Rich in 5 Hours, right?
Yeah, if they click on that link, it'll take them right to Amazon. All the ebooks that are there are free. There's some really cool stuff there. I
Okay.
encourage you, go get that clarity toolkit, go through the exercise.
Yeah.
And when you figure out what you want, then download Goal Mastery and apply it. It's great. And then, like I
Yeah.
said, there's some other stuff there. I've owned, I don't know, 4 or 5 businesses, and there's actually an ebook I created called "Will Your Business Idea Work?" It's really
Hmm.
interesting. I use 3 or 4 different kind of concepts to look at a business idea, and
Yeah.
I want your business idea to work in what I call the job-free economy, and I
Hmm.
describe what classifies as a job-free economy, because again, that's part of back to this thing about billionaires. It's interesting. What's on this board isn't go invent the next Facebook. It's not
Right.
go find a building that cash flows 10,000 a month. These 10 traits have nothing to do with making money. But when you
Yeah.
get this straight, the money just follows. You don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Yeah.
selfmadewealth.co. If you go out there, click on the ebooks, click on the podcast, click on the blog. The book is out there. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can email me,
Yeah.
joe@selfmadewealth.co. I'll help you with anything. If you got a question, you need a form, a document, a reference, just email me. I don't care whether I know you or not. I'll help you.
Yeah. Joe, self-made. Hang on a second. I don't know if I wrote that one down. Oh, self-made wealth. There it is. I got it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all one word,
Selfmadewealth.co.
selfmadewealth.co.
The problem is my handwriting, Joe. Sometimes I can't even read and understand my own handwriting. I'm like, what's that? So, but
No
you know
worries.
what's interesting here? This is a great time to wrap this up. We covered so much.
Yeah.
I think I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you, but I want to point out one thing here for everybody that can watch this, because we'll put it on YouTube and Facebook. You can watch the live recording as well as listen to it. But the number 4 on Joe's board says lifelong learner. And I'm telling you, this is one of the traits I've noticed with all the wealthy people that I've been blessed to be able to meet, is they never stop learning. And
Yeah.
yeah, thankfully I've got the same trait, I guess. I'm just, sometimes I feel like I'm the lucky guy. Like, do I really belong here? I mean, I'm like my own worst critic. And in spite of all the accolades, I mean, it's just, in any case, I want to get back to this. I want to say thank you, Joe, in a way, and more than just the words. I want everybody that's listening, please leave a review for this podcast. I mean, we've had some really good ones, you guys, and this is one of the really good ones. And
Oh,
if
thank you,
you're a
Gary.
real estate agent and you're wondering what to do in this economy that we're in, the
Yeah.
volume's down. It's all over the country. It's not just one neighborhood. It's everywhere. Volume is down. It is. It's just a fact of life.
Oh,
It is
absolutely.
going to turn. It's probably going to take a correction to do it, but it doesn't mean you panic. It's time to prepare. Reach out to Joe. Listen to Joe's podcast. Email him, call him. I mean, I'm going to have Joe teach one of my Monday Night Live classes. Okay, so you can listen to
That'd be
Joe
great.
again
Yeah.
and watch him and ask questions directly on Monday Night Live. And in fact, that's going to be, is that the 15th of April? I think
Yeah, I don't remember. I
Monday
have it
the
in my calendar. And
Monday the
I want
15th.
to throw one other thing in there, about,
Sure.
because you said it, the market is going to turn, inventory will come back. And that's why it's important now to be doubling down on connecting with people. Be on
Yeah.
Facebook more, do your YouTube videos, have a podcast, be calling past clients. Because what's going to happen is you're going to build up all this pent-up momentum. And when the market turns, everybody's going to be used to hearing from you. And when that market turns, everybody's going to come to you. A lot of people have
Mhm.
this mentality like, well, I'm not, I'm going to go do something else now. And when the market turns, I'll come back. You won't have any momentum build up. So it's like this, there's a massive opportunity right now to position yourself as the go-to professional when that market turns. And that's my
Yeah.
mindset. I'm dropping videos like crazy right now because when the
Yeah.
market turns, I'm going to have this tsunami of business. So there's actually an
Yeah.
opportunity right now to do the work. Don't worry about the deals. If you do the work, there'll be a wave of deals waiting for you. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. It's absolutely true. What you're describing there is one of the laws of being a successful business owner that I've learned is it's cyclical. The business is going to go up,
Yeah.
business is going to go down. When the business is down, you keep waking up every day, hitting the ground running. You got to swing the bat every day. You might be sharpening the blade and fine tuning your tools and your marketing, but keep doing it, because when the market does turn around, half the people are going to be leaving. The other half that stayed, that did what Joe just described there, they're going to get the vast majority of the business. And that can be you if you just simply follow what Joe's teaching here. So
Yeah.
you guys listen, take care of yourselves. God bless you and your families. And we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cashflow podcast.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cashflow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.